Hello and thanks for joining me for some more photography. In this video I thought I'd take a look at photo processing options. Now let's start with the elephant in the room. Many photographers are kind of locked into the Adobe trap, where you've got a subscription model which does tend to go up in price pretty regularly and pretty substantially, and they make it next to impossible to cancel that subscription. First of all, you've got to try and find where to cancel it because it's buried on page 97 of their website. And then if you do manage to find the link, you find out that you're actually locked into a 12-month contract, which you've got to buy yourself out of. So not the best look as far as I'm concerned, although full disclosure, I'm not going to be moving away from Adobe because I'm kind of locked into it for professional purposes. I've been using Photoshop for 20 years and Lightroom for probably since it came out, which 07 was it? Don't know. Anyway, doesn't matter. So completely coincidentally, a couple of months ago, Skylum got in touch with me and said, we've got this new version of Luminar coming out. Would you take a look at it? And I said, yeah, why not? So I've got a free copy of it. It's out now. It's just been released. But Skylum don't get to see this any sooner than you do. So all my opinions are my own and no money changed hands. So the key features of the new version are that they've dropped the name Neo. Don't think that makes much difference to anybody, but there we go. So it's just called Luminar now. But what they have done is they quite nicely polished up the interface and made some processing improvements. So I think it's definitely worth taking a look at. Before we get into it, let's talk about AI. Most image processing software these days has got AI plastered all over it. And you'd be forgiven for thinking, well, they're just aiming it at complete beginners and it has no use to I'm not going to use the word professional, but more experienced photographers who are comfortable in how to do advanced processing. Now, the thing about Luminar is they're no different. There's lots of AI baked into this application. But what I've found is that it's there if you want it, but it's not in your face, and it's not the be-all and end-all of the system. I think there are kind of three use cases for the software. The first is as an introduction to processing, where somebody who's been using JPEGs out of camera but is thinking about going to RAW files and working on them themselves. Luminar is a really, really strong contender as an entry level to that sort of thing, because it really holds your hand through the process. The second use case, which frankly is what I'm going to be doing, is using it alongside other products. So I use Lightroom and Photoshop. I also use DxO Nik plugins a lot, pretty much on every image. And the reason I use those is because it can do stuff at the click of a button that otherwise would take me a long time. And I think from my own workflow, there are quite a few things in Luminar that are going to be really useful. So I will definitely be using it. And for that reason, clearly, I would recommend it. Now, the third use case is completely abandoning an Adobe software or any other software and just switching over to Luminar. So the question that I ask myself is, can it do that? So you've got those three levels, and I think actually it's perfectly feasible on all three. So let's just take a quick look around the interface. So as you can see, it starts with a very sort of Lightroom-esque feature in that you've got a catalogue that shows you your thumbnails. So it's really useful. You can star your images, you can search for images. It shows you all of your file structures. It also comes with tutorials. These are baked in, which are really handy, especially if you're a beginner. And when you're on your catalogue page, all of the buttons that you need to do your processing are all over on this side of the screen. So I've dropped a couple of images in, and I'm just going to quickly show you around some of the features of Luminar, but bear in mind this is not a tutorial. This is just me highlighting a couple of things that I think are interesting, just to give you a flavour of how it works. There are loads of videos out there if you want to know more before you purchase it. So I've got my image open and we'll just kind of run down these sections here because this is pretty much all there is to it. That's why I think it's a really good option for beginners. And when you click through onto the image, over on this side of the screen, you get your layers. And that allows you, if you want to layer images up just like you do in Photoshop. I'm not going to go into detail on that. That's from many other videos. But all I want to point out is that you can use layers and mask the layers just like you can in Photoshop. Over on this side, I'm going to start by looking at the presets. What the presets do is they move some of the sliders for you, and they're really quite useful. So if we look at this one, for example, big city lights. The presets come in different collections. These are all built in, but of course, as with anything, you can buy more and plug them in. What I do like is that the presets come with a slider to allow you to dial it back a bit if you think the preset itself is a bit too much. Let's have a look at the tools we've got available to us. Obviously, we've got crop, and if we look at we've got these AI options. I'll come on to the AI in a moment. Image quality, it allows you to denoise it, allows you to sharpen it, and that's the standard developed tools. But what I think is it's a really nice slick interface. It's really easy on the eye, it's not cluttered, it's very straightforward, and it does encourage you to explore. Close up that. Coming down into here, we've got all sorts of AI effects we can add. So things like, if we want to, we can add sun rays. There you go. I'm not sure I would use that, but it gives you the creative options if you want to have a muck about with it. Let's take those off. We look at the creative ones. And what I'm going to do with this, I'm going to go back to my catalogue. I'm going to fire up a different image. So one of the modules that I really quite like is light depth, because it emulates what I do when I'm dodging and burning with radial filters. But with this, you can actually tell it where you want the light to be positioned. So what we'll do is we'll just make it really obvious. I wouldn't use that much. I'm just doing it to show you how it works. This allows you then to control exactly where your light is landing. And you see here, if I was using radial filters, I would have to apply them onto the roofs of the houses. If you look at this mask here, if I just dial it back like that, the light's in the foreground, but it's just also selecting the roofs of these houses, and that would save me an awful lot of time. So I will definitely be using this particular tool. Clearly not to that extent. Let's dial it back a little bit, make it look sensible. And in the extras, we've got all sorts of interesting things. So we've got generative erase, generative swap, generative expand. We can upscale photos by dropping them onto this panel. And then we've got our standard merge tools. Now that's one of the things that if I were to migrate from Adobe, I really couldn't do without. So HDR merge, focus stacking and panorama stitching. If you're a landscape photographer in particular, those are the sort of things you would make a lot of use of. We come back to the tools panel. This down here is what I think is really useful. This is the AI assistant, and you can simply ask it questions and it will explain to you how to use these tools to do what you want to achieve. And this is where I think Luminar is a really strong contender. If you're a little bit worried about shooting raw files and then, well, how do I go about editing them? Because Lightroom and Photoshop has got a steep learning curve, or actually, to be fair, some of the other applications I've looked at are equally confusing if you're new to it. What I do like about Luminar is that I could certainly recommend it to the people that I work with as a first start in processing your images. So as you can see, I've asked it, how can I make the mountain in this image more prominent? And it's come up with some ideas. Now, let's be fair, if you're experienced at photo processing, none of these are going to be particularly interesting to you. However, if you're a complete beginner, all of a sudden this becomes really useful because you're not going to ChatGPT. And what does ChatGPT know about photo editing? So what Skylum have done here is built an agent that is, in effect, an experienced photo editor. So let's just quickly go back to our three use cases. For me, definitely alongside Adobe that I'm locked into. That's absolutely, I will definitely use it, and I think it'll be really helpful. If you're looking to completely replace Adobe, it's certainly doable, but I think that if you're a really advanced user, it would be a bit of a struggle. And I tried. I put quite a few images through it without going anywhere near Lightroom and Photoshop, and I struggled. I think that it's possibly because I've been using it for so long. If you haven't been using it for as long and perhaps not as advanced, then this most certainly could replace it, and you could save yourself a whole load of money. Now, I think one of the strongest use cases for this software, and certainly something that I will be pointing people at who I work with, if you're shooting JPEG, because shooting RAW and doing processing seems like, whoa, it's a scary prospect. Think of it like this. You've gone out and bought a camera and you've paid a fair bit of money to have a really good sensor, millions and millions of pixels. But when you allow it to just give you a JPEG at the end of the process, the camera is throwing away 80% of those pixels based on what a laboratory, the manufacturers decided would be how the picture should look. They don't know what you were photographing. They don't know what the lighting conditions were. They have no idea. They give you some options, like you get vivid and standard and natural and landscape, black and white even. So you're just putting your photography in the hands of somebody who's got no idea how you're using your camera. Now, the advantage of something like Luminar is you can shoot raw, drop it in, and then you can tell Luminar exactly what you want using the AI. So you can go, okay, Luminar can see that it's a picture of a mountain with a town in front of it. And you might say, oh, I want the reds of the huts to be a bit more red. How do I go about that? The AI will direct you. You still end up with a JPEG, but what you're not doing is letting the camera throw all those pixels away and keeping your fingers crossed. So I think that something like this, as opposed to pretty much anything else, is a really, really good starting point. Now, I'm not going to do a complete walkthrough of processing a RAW file from start to finish, but these couple of example images that we've been looking at, I've actually processed them right through to the finished product. And I've got to say, I'm pretty happy with what Luminar can do. So what's all this going to set you back? Well, it's a one-time payment for a lifetime license, which is frankly how software should be. You can get the basic desktop app, which is what I've been showing you, for just 99 quid at the moment. I don't know if that's going to change when they release this new version, because obviously I'm filming this before it's released. But yeah, 99 quid all in. I mean, if you stop paying Adobe, you'd soon save your money back. And there's also an all-singing, all-dancing version that covers all your mobile devices. So whether you're on Android, iOS, iPad, or whatever you're using, it's got a version that will do everything I've shown you on your mobile device. And that comes in at just 139 quid. So pretty good value, I'd say. I'll put a link in the description for you to check it out if you want to. I'm happy to answer questions in the comments. Bear in mind, I've only been working with this for a few weeks, so there's probably a lot that I've still got to learn, but I'll do my best to answer any questions. So I'm going to leave it there for this one. Thank you ever so much for joining me. I really hope you've enjoyed it. And if you have, why not subscribe and join me next time? Cheers.